Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the HZSOUND Waist Drum. This is the latest release from HZSOUND. Um, well, at least me, it caught me by surprise. I was not expecting it. But anyway, this is the latest released by HZSOUND. It's a bullet styled IEM sporting a 6mm driver, supposedly LCP driver. I can't really confirm that, but I suppose it's an LCP driver. And it's got, well, yeah, the specs, 16 ohm impedance, half decent sensitivity, and so it should be relatively easy to drive with your iPhone or with your Android based phone. And yeah, that's basically it in terms of the boxing. As you can see, simple, nothing really too fancy. Got some paperwork, the IMs came over there, and underneath here we have a good selection of tips. It's got some of these tips are like these Sony clones and replacement filters for the nozzle, but this is basically the same kind of package that comes with its bigger brother, the hard mirror. So I mean, it's nice that they've done the same thing and included it as well. And it brings a cloth-based pouch, which I'll show to you in a second, and obviously a cable, replacement cable. And that's basically it. I mean, simple, short and sweet. That's it. There's also a version which has got a mic. This is my version, is the non-mic version. Okay, I'll show it to you. So this is the pouch, simple cloth, nice enough, good space, and the IEMs themselves over here. Just focus, there we go, the IEMs themselves over here. Really tiny IEMs. I mean, these things are small. Let me see, as a basis of comparison, those of you that have a Tanya, okay, this is a Tanya, this is the waist drum. I mean, that is tiny, 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 tiny. Makes the Tanya look like a giant. Okay. Anyway, this is, as you can see, I've got a whole bunch of stuff in front of me, which I'm going to explain what it is and why they are here, why they are not here, what's the reason for all of this. In terms of what I used to start with, in terms of what I used for amplifying or listening, or I used the Megatron. I used the creative Super XFI amp deck, also known as the SXFI, and my little Frankenstein, the topping NX7 with the BTR 3K serving as the deck, since the NX7 is only a power amp. And this I used in both wired connection to my source and as a Bluetooth connection as well. So this is my third selection that I used to power these IEMs and to listen to them. As for the IEMs themselves, what do I have here? Well, I've got a selection of IEMs that was based on, first of all, a driver size which was smaller than 8mm, so they all had to have drivers which were smaller than 8mm. And out of all of these, only the Jade Audio JD3 has an 8mm driver. The rest is all smaller, 5, 6, 6, 6, 7, 6.8, 6, 6, and 6. 6.2 actually. So all of them have got very small drivers. That was one of the criteria. The other criteria was that the price had to be absolute maximum $35, which all of them as well are below that price. And the third was that they all had to be bullet styled, and the only two which break that rule here are the AudioSense, the T100, sorry. As you can see, it's got this Shure kind of shell type. All right, fits flawlessly. I mean, really, really well. And the other one is, of course, the Blonde Mini, which has got this kind of spaghetti, which one might call it, kind of shape. Anyway, These are the only two that didn't fit 100% that criteria of the bullet style. The rest all did. And yeah, and that's kind of the basis for this review. Those that have followed or that do follow me and that know that have seen my previous reviews and my selection or my recs for this type or this style of IEM know that I have three recs. I have the Tanya, I have the DQSM Hermit over here, and I have the wired version of the Vesna, the fixed wired version of the Vesna, because the Vesna has a version which is the Evo, which is over here as well, which is a removable cable. Okay, so let me break down each one of these earphones first, and that will enable me to then position better the waist drum. Okay, let's start here with the Senfer. There is two distinct groups of IEMs here in terms of their overall sound signature. We have ones which are more V signature, then ones which start becoming more neutralish, and then ones which have, let's say, varying degrees of either bright warm or bright neutral, or the bright V-ish kind of signature, let's put it that way. The Senfer, the KP616, a big monster V signature, loads of bass, boomy, but it's fun, it's engaging, it has its merits, you know. It's big. It's actually quite big for a 5mm earphone. If you want to just have a terms of comparison here, let me just grab here the waist drum. I mean, that is huge. Let's put it that way. For a earphone using a 5mm driver, it's huge, and it basically is down to the fact that they use this removable cable system, which is on this appendix here, open back, as quite a few of them actually are in this group. Has a vent? No, hasn't got a vent. Hasn't got a front vent. Not one that I can see at least. Anyway, as I was saying, monster V signature. So a lot of emphasis on the bass, and then on the highs. The highs are the biggest problem because it's got these crazy peaks at 5, 6, 7K, and that just makes the sound become very sibilant. It's a little bit aggressive, but as I said, it's got its merits. I guess there will be people that will enjoy it, and with the right music and with the right volume level, you know, they can be, I guess, half listenable. Okay, then we have the AudioSense T100, which is also a monster in terms of its bass characteristic. I actually called it, when I reviewed it, the Fat Lady, with no disrespect intended to any of the fat ladies, because of the, well, fat lady with a big booty, that's what I actually call it. And yes, it's got loads of bass. The bass is although it's a lot of quantity of bass, it's actually got some decent quality to it. And compared to the Senfer, you notice that yes, it's got lots of bass, but it's got there's some texture to the bass. There's some quality to this bass, so I'll give it that. And then yes, it doesn't have as much high frequency extension, but that's a good thing to a certain extent, because at least we're saved from any excessive sibilance or aggressiveness or anything of the sort. And although yes, the mids are recessed and they're not the best mids in the world and this and that, at least you know, it's a darkish signature with an emphasis on the bass frequencies, but it's half decent, and one that I would take any day over the Senfer personally. I would prefer the AudioSense over the Senfer. Okay, then we have the FIO Jade Audio JD3, which when I reviewed it, I said it was a pity that they hadn't maybe just paid a little bit more attention to the tuning, because it's got nice bass. It's got a nice, the way the bass is done is nice. It's got good extension to the sub bass, and then with the pin again peaking it around 2K, and then it has this dip, and this dip, yes, okay, fine, it can do away with some harshness or some, but why have this dip and then follow that dip with all these peaks, which just make things, I don't understand, And then it has, graphically at least, it has all this extension up top, which doesn't really translate into it when you listen to it. So it's a darkish sounding IEM with this deficit in the mid frequencies that just close down, the voice reproduction, and overall just, it's a pity. It is really a pity. I think with a little bit more of attention to detail, they could have made this actually be a pretty decent IM, because it's not expensive. It costs about $25, $25 roughly. And like I said, it's actually, there's potential, but it's just been, I don't know. Next, the Blonde Mini. I'm not really gonna as well spend too much time on this. We know what it's about. It was an IM which came out with the premise of beating the 03, and it didn't do it. Decent bass extension, decent enough mid bass. The mids, they're okay. Just the upper mids then just start messing up. It's got these peaks at 7, 8K, which, especially 7K, which can be harsh for some people. Treble quality, quantity is okay, and it's in balance with the rest, but just the quality, there's just something there. And overall, well, it was an IM that was actually even more expensive than the 03 at the time of its launch, and it made just no sense, because the 03, in my opinion at least, just walked all over it. There was nothing that the 03 didn't do better than this. So it was pointless, and I guess that reflects itself in relatively poor sales, because the truth is, I've never really heard anything more of the Mini. I don't even know if it's still available, but anyway, it is what it is. Then we have the Astrotec Vesna brothers, the Vesna Evo and the Vesna with the fixed cable, and although they share supposedly the same hardware, in terms of sound they are very different. This sports, the fixed cable one sports a signature which is within a 5 dB band, up to about 5K, 6K, stays within a 5 dB band, which is very uncommon for an IEM of this price. So very well executed, very nice bass, very nice mids. The clarity of the bass in the mids, it's really good. And then past 5, 6K then rises, but it rises in a very acceptable manner, and at no point is it aggressive or anything of the sort. It's a nice sounding IM which has got a different signature, and because of it having a different signature and it being well executed, is one of the first 3 recs that I usually give. So if you want a neutralish sounding IM that's well executed, definitely the Vesna with the cable, with the fixed cable. The removable cable Vesna, the Evo, well, you would expect would be the same thing, but no. It's got this mid bass bump, which is very, well, not very common, but it's what you also find then on the Final E2K, you find on the Tanya, you find on the DQSM, you find on the Waist Drum. But it's a little light, so it's a little bit too little. And then it's got this above 1K signature, which is I tried three versions of this earphone, and they all came within more or less the same thing. And it's kind of like a harmonish type, let's say, frequency response, and it just lends the overall signature of this more along the lines of the Tanya, the E2K, than it does along its brother. Let's put it that way. And of the two, to be honest, the cabled version, fixed cable version, is the better one. Yeah, unquestionably the better one. For me, for my music, and I think there are a few other people that share my opinion. This, for some reason, I don't know if it's the fact that maybe I don't know, the space left inside of the shell, because this has got the removable cable, is less, and that affects the overall. I don't know what it is. I really do not know. All I do know is that this just sounds better. That's it. And then we enter these final three before coming here to the waist drum. On top there we have the final E2K, one of the more expensive ones in this group. Nice sounding IEM, warmish. The extension up top is not that great, but it's enough. It sufficed for the rest of the frequency response. It's got great mids. The mids on here are absolutely amazing. Nice mid bass bump with a roll off then towards the sub bass. Although it's well executed, and you don't find it overly thin. You don't find it's really missing, but it's no rumble monster, let's put it that way. For me, its biggest drawback is it's very flimsy in the overall construction. They're tiny, they're small, they're about the same size as the waist drum, probably the ones that are actually the closest to the waist drum in terms of overall size. Okay, as you can see, all right. Again, both of them open back, as you can see, which is a feature that some of them, as I mentioned, already have. The cable is just too flimsy. I don't know. Nice sounding IM, like I say, but it just makes no sense when you then have other IMs with very similar sounding signatures, priced at a lower value. So that's why this ends up losing and not being one of my recs. And then these final two here, the DQSM and the Tensjum Tanya, both are here again for being IMs that for their respective sound signatures they've been extremely well done. This has got this mid bass bump, followed then by this great extension up top, which makes it kind of remind me of the HZSOUND Heart Mirror. So super detailed, super clean. Is it perhaps colored? Yes, it could be considered that it's perhaps colored and perhaps a little bit excessive, but the reality is that it's very well done, super clean, super revealing, and honestly one of the IMs that I think didn't really get the deserved merit that it should have gotten. It's not a fixed cable. It's a pretty big IEM actually for all intents and purposes. It's got a 6.8mm driver, and like I said, brightish with a warm bass section signature. Sounds really good, very technical IEM, and one of the recs. So if you wanted a more bright sounding IEM, definitely this. A more neutral sounding IEM, definitely the Vesna with the fixed cable. And if you want something that kind of has the Tensjum signature harmonish kind of signature, then the Tanya is the one to go for. Again, an open back design, 7mm driver, mid bass bump, really nice mids, which can sometimes be a little bit closed in, but it's got nice mids. Early roll off into the treble, but again, it's well done, it's well executed, so you don't really notice that there's a lot of information missing. Yes, okay, detailed retrieval does get affected slightly by it, but overall, don't forget, this was an IEM that when it came out was like $18, and it's basically still maintained itself at the same price. That plays really well. It's got this nice, very tonally correct sound to it, and it scales beautifully. This is one of those IEMs that you look at it and you think, oh, this thing is so flimsy, it's gonna break down the moment I give it some power. No, you couldn't be wrong. You give it power and this thing just comes alive in a way which is not usually seen in smaller IEMs or in cheaper priced IEMs. You give it power, this thing just comes alive. It cleans up the mids, the bass tightens up, the extension doesn't increase, but it becomes just that little extra crispier. it's one of those IMs that definitely does benefit from that. Okay, okay. All of this talk and blah blah blah, for what? For us to finally arrive at the heart mirror. The waist drum, and talk about it and say what it's all about. Before doing that, I'm just going to exclude straight away the IMs that just are pointless to continue in this group here, for reasons that are either price, sound just doesn't make sense with what you're able to get at cheaper prices even, and those are the same for it is what it is. The audio sense, with a great pity of mine actually, because I actually do like it, but you get better for the same amount of money. The Jade audio as well, the signature, not its plus point. The Blonde, because it again doesn't make sense with what you have here from other IMs. It sound better, and what you can even get from its own brother, the 03. Okay, which then leaves us, the final audio that, for all its goodness and capabilities and so on and so forth, it costs around $30. And when this costs $30 and you can get a Tanya for 20, no, it doesn't make sense. So those are out of the way there straight away. Okay, and I'm also going to do away with the fixed cable version of the Astrotec, because not the fixed version, sorry, the removable cable version, because the fixed cable version is better, it plays better, and this sound signature is more along the lines of the Tanya, and again the Tanya is superior. It's a much better IEM. Okay, so that does away with the majority of them. This leaves us with my 3 Rex up to now, which was, if you wanted something neutralish, Astrotec. Definitely, I mean, this thing really, you have to listen to this and give it power, amplify it. The same thing as the Tanya. You won't believe it. The Tanya, for the reason I just said. And if you want a more brightish, more detailed, sound, definitely the DQSM Herbert. This has got a sound which approximates it the most to the DQSM. Why? It's also got that mid-bass bump, although it's not as, when you listen to it, it's not as pronounced as on the DQSM or on the Tanya, which are the two that have that mid-bass focus or emphasis with the roll-off into the sub-bass and so on and so forth. The mids, they start slightly later than on the DQSM, and they more laid back. They're not as forward as on the DQSM. And then the high frequencies also nicely extended, lots of detailed retrieval capabilities and so on and so forth. I didn't, at least with the music that I listened to, I didn't see anything or any instance that it was able to be more detailed, have better micro nuance capabilities and macro nuance capabilities than the DQSM. No. What I did see was that it was more laid back than the DQSM, and that made it have this sensation that you never were on the edge, as sometimes could happen with the DQSM. Okay, I never found the DQSM to be aggressive, mind you, or sibilant or anything of the sort, but you could have instances that you feel, oh, hold on, if I put on the volume just a little bit more, it's going to become aggressive. While over there, I didn't find that. Does it scale well? Yes, it scales well. It maintains everything within a good overall balance as you increase the volume. But the one that definitely does scale the best here is the Tanya. That one definitely scales the best, with a very close second being the Vesna, the fixed cable version of the Vesna. These two, they scale about the same as well. The HZSOUND being more composed and maintaining itself a little bit more composed than the DQSM. The waist drum, the one advantage that it does have straight away over the the DQSM is that it offers, like I said, a similar sound, with the advantage of it being a newer IEM, so more easily available. The DQSM being an older IEM, it starts becoming a little bit difficult to sometimes find it or get hold of it, and well, obviously being fixed cable, if eventually the cable breaks or something, it's going to be more complicated to replace it or to fix it and so on and so forth, while over there it's just a relatively process to undertake. In terms of other technicalities, soundstage, detail, imaging and so on and so forth, they are good for the price, acceptable, let's put it that way, okay? They are good that way. Soundstage and imaging very equal to the DQSM. I didn't find that it was better than the Astrotec, and yes, it was slightly better imaging than the Tanya. Yes, so better imaging than the Tanya, slightly inferior to the Astrotec, and about the same as the DQSM. Soundstage, again, about equal with all of them, not really major differences. Details retrieval, yes, better than the Tanya. The DQSM has also got excellent detail retrieval. The Astrotec has also got excellent detail retrieval. So, it starts, well, it doesn't start, but in technicalities, it kind of shows its ground. Tonally and timbre wise, personally, this is me personally, I find that the Tanya is the most correct, with the Astrotec as well, fighting for first place. And these two are just different levels of color tonality, of color timbre, if what I'm saying would make any sense. You know that there's an emphasis in the higher frequencies. You know that there's this desire to make this sensation of air, of 3D and so on and so forth. But it's well done, and sometimes it can make certain music just feel just not 100% realistic. Okay. Anyway, that in a nutshell, I think, kind of resumes what I have to say about the HC Sound. It is definitely an IM which I will start wrecking, and the reason that I will start wrecking is twofold. First of all, because it does play well. It's not better than the Astrotec. It's not better than the Tanya. It just does its sound signature very well, the same as with the DQSM. And the other reason why I'm putting it here as well as a rec is because, as I just mentioned earlier, the DQSM is becoming increasingly more difficult to find. At least I don't find it as easily as I used to before. So eventually this will fade away, and those three will be the recs. Depending on what your sound preference is, you choose which one you will want the most. And yeah, that's very much basically it. As just one final thing that I wanted to say, as with regards to its bigger brother, the heart mirror, is this better? No. Period. That's all I have to, in a nutshell, say. Yes, it might occasionally, because it's got this mid-bass bump, have a timbre which is more correct than the HC Sound heart mirror, and a tonality that is just okay, but the rest, there's no contest. The heart mirror's bass quality is amazing, and the way that then it just goes and fetch all those details and everything. I mean, the price difference is minimal. We're talking, excuse me, minimal. This is $32, depending, 30, 32, 33. The heart mirror, 40, 41. Heart mirror, honestly, if I was you know, if I have to be 100% honest, heart mirror is a better IM and would make more sense. Having said that, of course, if you do have a heart mirror, or if you just like a smaller sounding IM that has a very similar sound, that has got that DNA of the heart mirror, then definitely the waist drum is the option to go for. So if you like the sound of the heart mirror, you will like the sound of the waist drum, unquestionably. You might even be more surprised at times by its capabilities. I won't deny that as well. There was a few instances that I was actually, wow, this is actually, but then you listen more carefully and you see that the HM has its has enough points to justify why it's one of the best IEMs under $50, and beating IEMs more expensive than that as well, and an IEM that for a long time as well, in my opinion, was very much under the radar. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little review of mine. I'll post links of where you can get this, obviously, as usual, and the list of the songs I used to hear and to compare. And as always, if you like, the channel and my content, please subscribe. If you want to ask any questions, please feel free to ask questions. I always do my absolute best to answer everybody. I think there are very few instances where I don't answer, and it's not because I don't want to, it's just because I forget to, for this reason or other. But usually, like I say, I do my absolute best to reply to everybody's questions. All right, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.